She walked away and believed that leaving meant she had the upper hand. She thought that by closing the door she had turned the tide, controlled the narrative, and guaranteed a reaction. That's the common assumption, that absence forces obsession, that loudness demands an answer. But what she underestimated, what most people overlook, is the immense force that comes when you do the exact opposite of what she expects. You don't scream. You don't chase. You don't plead. You choose silence. Not the weak silence of resignation, but a fierce, intentional silence rooted in dignity, purpose, and self-possession. This silence is not merely a lack of sound, it is an action. It is a reallocation of energy from proving your value to living it. The moment you stop reacting, the dynamic changes. The silence reverberates in ways words cannot. It becomes a mirror that reflects things people rarely get the chance to see. When you stop answering every impulse to reconnect, when you stop trying to correct or clarify, you give the space back to reality. She had expected a storm of messages, an apology, some frantic attempt to patch what she broke. Those were the outcomes she had rehearsed. But instead she encountered stillness. And that stillness unsettles because it refuses to play by her script. Silence carries weight. It forces questions to the surface that her distractions had been hiding. Did he really move on so easily? Did he ever value me? Has he realized he deserves better? Those questions are not manufactured by you, they emerge because the emptiness left by your withdrawal begins to fill with unfiltered thought. When you choose silence, you are giving the other person a task they probably never had to perform: look inward without interruption. There is a quality in composed absence that feels like gravity. When your energy and attention used to be predictable, your presence anchored the other person. Your ready replies and constant availability were the comfort they assumed would always be there. They were provided emotional padding. But when you withdraw that padding, the emotional architecture they had relied on starts to wobble. Suddenly the predictable orbit is gone, and with that disappearance comes an odd kind of vertigo. This isn't about playing psychological games, it's about self-protection and recalibration. A Stoic man understands the power of withdrawing his energy not to punish but to preserve. He knows that chasing closure from someone who has already chosen distance is usually an indulgence that costs more than it pays. So he refrains. He turns his attention inward, to his habits, his goals, his peace. It's crucial to understand the difference between absence driven by anger and absence driven by composure. Anger is a fire that seeks to burn and make noise. Composure is a forge that reshapes you quietly and deliberately. When you sit in composure, you are not passive, you are purposeful. You use the time that might have been wasted on trying to convince someone of your worth to actually increase it. Reflection replaces the need for reassurance. Where once you might have chased explanations, now you allow silence to expose the reality of the relationship. She had grown used to you validating, patching, explaining. But when those scaffolds vanish, the person who left must finally see what they did without someone constantly softening the landing. Your silence forces a reckoning, and that reckoning is often more revealing than any argument or pleading ever could be. While you are silent, you are not waiting in limbo. Waiting is passive and defeatist. Silence that works is full of motion, it is self-work, self-respect, and self-rebuilding. It is the slow, steady accumulation of small acts that compound into a new life. You don't disappear to make her chase, you disappear because your attention is finite and now redirected toward what yields growth: your habits, your body, your work, your friendships, your emotional mastery. This is not manipulation, it's prioritization. When someone who used to count on you no longer finds your energy available on demand, they must face the consequence of their choice. That consequence is clarity. She confronts her own choices in the hollow you leave behind. The power of silence is not solely external, it's profoundly internal. Consider how your identity shifts when you stop performing for validation. You stop proving and start becoming. People who are constantly reacting to other people's movements are living in a feedback loop, they are defined by external responses. But you who choose silence direct your life from an internal compass. You cultivate a center that does not wobble with every gust of drama. Marcus Aurelius taught that one should not be governed by the opinions of others. The man who embodies that idea stops being a puppet of reaction and becomes the author of his own narrative. He learns that the best response is often the one not given, because it holds the dignity of his inner life intact. There is a practical psychology at work here, too. When someone expects a reaction and gets stillness instead, they experience cognitive dissonance. Their internal predictions, that you will call, that you will explain, that you will beg, are proven wrong. The dissonance forces a reassessment. If you had been the steady gravity in someone's emotional life, your pull's suddenly gone creates an ache of uncertainty. In that ache, she will replay memories, reread texts, search for a trace of the old routine. The silence becomes a lens showing what your presence actually meant rather than what it was taken for. It is in that reevaluation that the possibility of regret emerges, not because you caused it on purpose, but because you allowed the truth to breathe. Your calm becomes the contrast that amplifies your value. In a world saturated with noise, flashy replies, performative remorse, theatrical declarations, calmness reads as scarcity and depth. Others will fill the space with superficial noise, quick compliments, shallow attention, the kind of swagger that looks good in a moment but reveals nothing under pressure. That noise is temporary by design, it is a bandage on a wound that needs healing. Your silence, on the other hand, is consistent and quiet, and that steadiness exposes itself as authenticity over time. When someone who left is swept up by new attention, the novelty can be pleasant. But novelty rarely competes with the memory of genuine steadiness. The person you were, the one who didn't have to prove anything, becomes the standard against which others are measured. That memory does not fade because it was real, it lingers because consistency burns deeper than charisma. Reflection is the crucible for accountability. By refusing to supply explanations, you allow the other person to take their emotional inventory. You cease to be their interpreter. That responsibility is a gift. Many people never have to look at their own patterns because someone else always makes it easier for them. Once the pattern of being fixed by your presence is broken, they must contend with their own choices. This is not vindictive. It is liberating for you and clarifying for them. You are not denying them the opportunity for growth, you are simply refusing to be the scaffolding for a structure they dismantled. Growth that matters is that which a person constructs themselves. Your silence is the environment in which that independent building starts to happen. Do not mistake dignity for indifference. There is a fierce tenderness to choosing your peace over drama. You can still carry compassion, you can wish the other person well and hope they find clarity. But compassion need not involve sacrifice of your boundaries or your standards. A man of Stoic disposition responds to harm with firm boundaries, not performative agony. He values his psychological safety, and he understands the long-term cost of forfeiting it for temporary reconciliation. He knows that forgiveness is not always synonymous with resumed access. Forgiveness can be internal, you can forgive the actions that hurt you while still closing the door to behaviors that are destructive. This is the mature form of letting go. As your silence persists, doubt begins to creep into the mind of the one who left. She told herself it would be different, that walking away would force you to come to terms, that it would spark a chase or a plea. When none of that happens, the carefully constructed narrative starts to unravel. Doubt is a subtle, relentless process. It is not a single lightning strike, it is a slow erosion. She reevaluates assumptions about you, about herself, about what she thought she could predict. She wonders whether your composed withdrawal is indifference or resolve, whether your lack of dramatic reaction masks resolve and integrity. Those doubts open a window. They are not your doing, they are the natural result of a person facing the absence of the emotional safety net they had been relying on. Your growth in silence is the most haunting form of proof. While she chases fleeting affirmations elsewhere, you are quietly building a life that no longer depends on external validation. You are cultivating habits, sharpening skills, strengthening your body and mind, and solidifying a sense of purpose that is independent of romantic turbulence. There is a radical attractiveness to someone who refuses to be defined by others' choices. It is not performative improvement, it is authentic transformation. You are not changing to punish, you are evolving because your life requires attention and you are finally giving it to yourself. That evolution isn't loud, it is steady. But steady becomes monumental over time. The man she let go of ceases to exist, in his place stands someone who has quietly mastered himself, and that revelation can be more destabilizing to her sense of control than any outburst would be. Let her test the waters if she wants to. People will throw breadcrumbs when they are uncertain, a meme, a casual like, a text sent at 2 a.m. Those are tests, and they are not necessarily malicious, sometimes they are an unconscious reaching for confirmation. A man anchored in Stoicism does not base his response on the emotional hunger of the moment. He evaluates the intent and the consequence. Does responding re-enter me into a cycle of seeking validation or drama? Does engaging pull me toward peace or pull me into old patterns of self-neglect? When the answer is unclear, a composed man waits. He refuses to relegate his self-worth to the results of a test. If someone truly wants to reconnect, they will do so with clarity and substance. If their outreach is a breadcrumb, it is not your responsibility to feast on it. Mystery grows in the space you do not fill. When someone no longer has access to your interior life, your details, your schedule, your thoughts, curiosity inevitably fills the vacuum. People are human, they imagine to understand. The less you reveal, the more they construct stories. And imagination is a potent tool, it can embellish, idealize, and mythologize. Your absence invites such myth-making, and in many cases the imagined version of you will be more compelling than the messy reality ever was. That is not to suggest you should become aloof or deceptive. Rather, when you honor your privacy and refuse to over-explain, you allow others to reckon with their projections. The mystery is the most human response to a lack of transparency. It is also an invitation for the other person to imagine, to feel the weight of what they left behind without your commentary guiding their interpretation. As silence continues, the inner dialogue of the person who left intensifies. They begin to answer questions themselves. Did he love me? Was he really invested? Did I misread him? They replay moments and reinterpret them through the new lens of your absence. This internal monologue is a painful but effective process. It is far more likely to lead to genuine insight than any external apology, because it is introspection that emerges without pressure. In that private theater, guilt, curiosity, regret, and clarity can all compete. And sometimes the best thing you can do is allow that competition to happen unsupervised. You do not orchestrate the outcome, you simply refrain from undermining the possibility. There are practical things you can do while you hold silence that amplify its effect and, more importantly, nourish you. Build structure into your days. Replace impulsive checks on social media with deliberate practices, 30 focused minutes on a skill, a run that clears your head, a studio session, disciplined work on a creative project, time with friends who elevate you, or weekly journaling that tracks your emotional progress. These actions are not to create a billboard advertising your transformation, they are the mechanism of transformation. They produce the results that silence alone cannot, a visible, tangible improvement in how you live. When change is backed by action, it is believable, to others and to yourself. Self-respect requires boundaries. Decide what you will accept and what you will not. Set those boundaries clearly within yourself. No midnight pleas, no resumes of a relationship that was one-sided, no returns to roles of emotional janitor. Boundaries are respectful, they are the rules by which your life operates. They are not punitive, they are protective. When you set them and keep them, you teach others how you want to be treated. And this is the core of Stoic practice, living according to a code. Your silence, paired with boundaries, is a code being enacted. It is a demonstration that you live by principles rather than whims. There is also a moral dimension to your silence. Staying silent is not the same as being cold-hearted. It is not a refusal to empathize or to forgive. It is a refusal to be consumed by another's indecision. It is choosing to invest your energy where it will have reciprocal value. That distinction is important because it keeps you humane. You can remain gentle in your private thoughts for the person who left, while being firm in your outward choices. This balance allows you to be centered and compassionate without betraying your own needs. The quiet you sit in will begin to create a new symbolic meaning. Silence will be associated not with loss or loneliness, but with composure and depth. People will notice. Not everyone will understand the reasoning. Some will call it pride or playing games. Ignore the labels. Those who matter, the ones who respect integrity and growth, will see the essence beneath the behavior. The Stoic man is not concerned with winning public opinion, he is concerned with aligning his actions with his values. That alignment is a stronger claim to dignity than any rhetorical defense you could mount. At some point, you must also be willing to accept whatever comes, unromanticized and unafraid. Silence creates consequences, and those consequences are not always comfortable. People change their minds, they move on, and some will never return. That is a risk intrinsic to reclaiming your peace. But the alternative, remaining available for the sake of familiarity, is a slow erosion of your selfhood. Choosing peace over longing is an act of courage. It signals that you will not barter your integrity for brief comfort. If she returns with genuine clarity, meet her from the present, not from the past. If she offers sincerity and meaningful action, you can choose to engage. But your engagement should be informed by the lessons you learned in silence. Request clarity, insist on reciprocity, and protect your boundaries. Do not allow nostalgia alone to dictate important decisions that affect your well-being. Sincerity requires proof through consistent action, not only eloquent words. Allow the past to be a teacher. If the pattern was one-sided before, ensure the future is balanced and earned. There will be critics, friends who say you should have made a scene, that silence looks like indifference, that drama is the fastest path to clarity. Humor them, then keep building. People often confuse noise for resolution because noise is immediate and visible. But resolution is durable and quiet. A life reassembled deliberately is more resilient than one temporarily patched by theatrics. The voice that suggests dramatics is the voice of short-term emotional impulse. The Stoic voice argues for longevity, for the architecture of a life that can weather storms without shattering. In the long run, the most persuasive message you can send is the life you lead. We are attracted to people who bring order to chaos because it suggests reliability, stability, and a depth of character. You might not be able to control how she processes her choice, but you can always control the narrative you live. Let your days tell the story of growth, the work you complete, the muscles strengthened, the projects shipped, the texts you don't send because you do not need to prove your worth. Let your calendar be the proof that you chose progress over pain, that you prioritized your future over a past that could not prioritize you. Silence is also a training ground for emotional resilience. The temptation to break it can be strong. You will want to fill the gap, to explain your side, to negotiate the terms of departure. Resist that impulse and ask instead, will responding close an honest chapter or will it reopen wounds? Sometimes a message is necessary for closure, other times it is a detour disguised as a bridge. In those moments, test your motive. Are you responding to soothe your ego or to restore dignity? The answer should determine the action. If your motive is healing, proceed with measured clarity. If your motive is to seek reassurance, sit with the discomfort and work on the underlying need. Practice gratitude in silence. It sounds strange, but gratitude transforms the tone of absence. Instead of seeing silence as deprivation, see it as an opportunity to appreciate what you have been given: time, clarity, the chance to build. Gratitude does not mean minimizing your hurt, it means recognizing that pain can be a teacher. In the quiet, list 3 things each day that you are building toward. These small acts of positive attention rewire your emotional circuitry. Over time, the habit of gratitude makes silence feel less like exile and more like a crucible for growth. Conversation is not always the best path to truth. When words have been used to paper over problems or to maintain an illusion of mutual care, silence can become a more honest medium. Silence exposes the structure of behavior and invites real inspection. In many relationships, words were used as a resource to keep the story alive while the reality dried up. True change is demonstrated in the day-to-day choices, not in the convincing language of a midnight message. The Stoic understands that when words fail, actions still teach. You may feel lonely in silence, and that's a real emotion deserving attention. Loneliness is not a moral failing, it's a signal. Use it. Reach out to friends who reflect your highest values, not to fill a void but to practice social intimacy that supports growth. Volunteer, collaborate, enter a course, or join a disciplined group that reinforces your aims. These connections temper loneliness with purpose and remind you that your identity is not singularly tied to past attachments. Accept that silence makes you less predictable, and that unpredictability can be an asset. People who can be counted on to react according to their code, not according to emotional agitation, become pillars in their communities. You become someone friends can look to for steadiness. That role carries responsibility and reward. It also elevates your life beyond the petty cycles of approval and attention. If at any point your silence becomes bitterness, course correct quickly. Bitterness corrodes the self and can transform dignity into a different kind of prison. Check your heart often. Are you withdrawing to heal or withdrawing to punish? The former empowers, the latter imprisons. Release resentment through meaningful action, channel it into work, into craft, into learning. Channeling transforms destructive fire into forward motion. Finally, take ownership of your story. Do not let someone else's choice define you. They had the right to choose, you have the right to choose how you respond. The Stoic man does not relinquish agency to the whims of others. He claims it. He uses silence not as a weapon but as an instrument for self-mastery. When you reclaim your time, your attention, and your peace, you do not shrink, you expand. You step into the larger version of yourself that was always available if only you would stop negotiating your worth for acceptance. If this has resonated with you, know you are not alone. Thousands have walked this path and found that the hardest quiet was the doorway to the truest freedom. If you want to practice this day by day, start with small commitments, no reactive texts for a week, a morning routine that centers you, a hard limit on midnight scrolling. Keep a journal of how your emotions change. Celebrate small victories, a calm day after a week of temptation, a decision made in accordance with your values, a morning you spent building instead of longing. Over time these small commitments accrue into something formidable, a life that speaks for itself. Silence, in the end, is not a passive retreat but an active strategy of self-care and sovereignty. It is a refusal to barter your peace for someone else's indecision. It is the slow, dignified reassembly of a life that refuses to be defined by loss. Stay disciplined. Stay calm. Protect your peace like the valuable commodity it is, because it is. And above all, remember this, the world notices quiet strength. It may not notice at once, but it notices with the kind of clarity that sticks. Your silence will do its work. Live the life that makes your silence eloquent. If any of this connected, share what part landed with you. If you felt clarity, strength, or even a little peace reading this, then take one concrete step today that honors that feeling. Subscribe to the Stoic Core. Start small, be consistent, and watch how silence becomes not an empty space but the architecture of your best self.